Yeah, normally I don't make a follow-up video like this, but yeah, the PlayStation scam is a lot worse.
Here are the biggest gaming leaks and news you've probably missed this week. So I stumbled across this post today at 5 a.m. It basically says that the PS5 Pro is a scam. The post comes from an Xbox shill on X called Anna Ansan, who's sharing a picture from wccftech, a reliable tech analytics site, questioning the 45% performance boost of the PS5 Pro. Her, or his, I don't exactly know what they identify as, but let's go with she based on the name. Conclusion is that the PS5 Pro is the biggest scam in gaming history. Now, before I jump in and roast the heck out of this post, I want to ask you a couple of questions. First, why are they making these posts? If your answer is clicks and money, it gets even more confusing to me because I'm not sure how much cash you'd even make with a post like this. Maybe $1 or $2 if you get 100,000 impressions. I know damn well Microsoft isn't paying accounts to spread this kind of nonsense online. Despite some people thinking Sony and Microsoft have like 10,000 secret fanboy accounts spreading propaganda about their consoles. I've personally been accused many times of getting paid by Sony just for saying nice things about the PS5 Pro. But here's the reality check. Sony wouldn't pay me, sponsor me, or even give me a review copy of a game. Why? Because I've reported on so many leaks about their upcoming hardware and games. And I've also questioned them many times on their anti-consumer practices. Sony doesn't partner with creators like me, and Microsoft doesn't partner with people making these kinds of posts either. So why are they doing it? No clue. All right, let's start breaking down these claims. Yeah, it's definitely the PS5 Pro. Yeah, definitely don't blame the studios and UE5 games that can't even run at native 4K 60 FPS on a $4,000 RTX 5090 rig. Yeah, sure. If the PS5 Pro is a scam, then we're gonna need to invent a new word for what the 50 series cards are. Meanwhile, we've got Black Myth Wukong finally releasing on Xbox a year later, and they somehow forgot to add shadows in performance mode. Wasn't the Xbox Series X supposed to be more powerful than the base PS5? Now, let's slow down. What's she quoting? The article she pulled is from wccftech. It basically says this: the PS5 Pro's big game boost feature falls short of Sony's promised 45% performance increase, and the reason is probably memory bandwidth constraints. That's the claim. Sounds dramatic, right? But here's the thing. There's some truth, but it's not the full story. Sony did market the PS5 Pro as having up to 45% faster rendering over the base PS5. That's where the hype comes from. They pumped in more compute units, faster memory, stronger GPU, all that jazz. The catch is, in real-world tests, especially in games without a Pro patch, you're seeing more like a 30 to 35% uplift. That's what Digital Foundry and wccftech noticed. But let's be real here. That's not nothing. 30% more performance is huge in console terms. If you jump from a PS4 Pro to a PS5 and only got 30%, people would have still lost their minds back then. The issue is expectation versus reality.
Putting that all together, it's great to have the higher performance, but even better, we're seeing more consistently high performance on PS5 Pro. That consistency comes from the improved handling of divergence. Performance testing on PS5 Pro tends to show a good boost for the coherent cases like shadows or reflections off of flat surfaces. But a much nicer boost for the divergent cases. The stack management hardware is really helping there. Having more consistent performance across a broad set of use cases will go a long way towards easing adoption of ray tracing.
The PS5 Pro has now been out long enough that we can really sit back and look at what it offers. And the first thing I'll say is this: when it works, when the right game gets that Pro treatment, this thing absolutely delivers. It's still the most powerful console on the market, no question about that. And if you start comparing it to building a gaming PC that could match this performance, you'd be looking at a much, much higher price tag. So in that sense, the Pro actually ends up being kind of a bargain, especially if you're someone who really values smoother gameplay and better image quality. The improvements it makes across the board are noticeable. Even something as simple as frame rate stability changes the way you play. If you've spent time on the base PS5 and then you jump to the Pro, it's hard to go back. Games like Monster Hunter Wilds really highlight this. On the regular PS5, it runs. It's fine. But on the Pro, it's a much smoother ride, way more stable, and honestly, just more fun to play because you're not fighting the performance. It doesn't feel like a new game, but it feels like a better version of the same game, which is kind of the point of this console. And that's something that's easy to miss if you're just watching side-by-side videos online. YouTube compression, screenshots, even streams, they just don't capture what the Pro is doing. You really have to see it live on a good screen to understand. That's when you start noticing how much cleaner the image is, how much steadier the frame rate feels, how much smoother animations play out. Now, not every game takes full advantage right away, because this is where Sony's new upscaling tech, PSSR, comes into play. Developers actually need to patch their games to take advantage of the latest version. It's not like the PS5 Pro automatically boosts everything across the board, but when those patches hit, that's when the magic happens. Look at Gran Turismo 7. After its patch, it suddenly had ray-traced lighting in car interiors. That might sound small, but the difference in how natural and realistic those interiors look is huge. Then, you've got Returnal, which got a resolution bump and much more consistent performance, basically turning a game that already looked good into something that feels sharper and smoother all around. Jedi Survivor is another big example. At launch, that game was a mess on every platform, but after the updates, the Pro version runs far better and actually uses the latest PSSR to give you a much cleaner image. Of course, not every story is positive. Alan Wake 2 had a rough launch on the Pro with messy upscaling, and Silent Hill 2 had it so bad they pulled PSSR out of the game entirely. But these are the exceptions. In most cases, patches have fixed things up over time, and more games are steadily improving. And it's not just Sony's own games that benefit. Even titles you wouldn't expect, like Forza Horizon 5, yes, an Xbox game on PlayStation hardware, actually look fantastic here. Higher detail, longer draw distances, and a really smooth performance that makes it one of the best ways to play the game outside of a high-end PC. It's weird to even say that out loud, but it shows how flexible this hardware really is. Other games like Days Gone Remastered also show how PSSR can improve visual stability, even if it sometimes comes with quirks like slightly less consistent frame rates. And then there are games like Assassin's Creed Shadows, which don't even need a Pro patch to benefit from the extra power. With ray-traced global illumination, the game just looks more alive and atmospheric on the Pro compared to the base PS5. The point is, the situation is constantly evolving. 6 months in, the Pro is in a much better place than it was at launch. More games have been patched, the technology is maturing, and the number of examples where the Pro really shines is steadily growing. It's not a total game changer, and it's definitely not for everyone. But for the people who care about smoother gameplay and better visuals, this is the console that actually delivers on that. So where does that leave us? The PS5 Pro isn't something I'd call a necessity. It's not like the jump from PS4 to PS4 Pro, where the use case was really clear and easy to justify. Instead, it feels more like a luxury item, a way to get the best version of the experience if you're willing to pay for it. If you've got a good 4K TV or monitor, and you're the kind of player who notices little things like frame pacing and shadow detail, you'll absolutely get your money's worth. If not, the base PS5 is still doing just fine. But that's what makes the Pro such a complicated upgrade. It's powerful, it's improving, but it's not going to blow everyone away. And that's kind of okay. At the end of the day, it's about choice. So let's talk about performance disasters. Because right now, two big games are under the microscope: Borderlands 4 and Chronos, The New Dawn. And man, if you're on PC, you probably already know what I'm about to say. These things are rough. Let's start with Borderlands 4. Steam reviews, mostly negative. Why? People with monster rigs, I'm talking RTX 4090s, even 5090s, can't keep a stable frame rate. At 4K on badass settings, Digital Foundry and DSO Gaming showed frame rates dipping into the low 40s. And that's on hardware that costs more than an actual car payment. We're not talking budget GPUs here. We're talking the kind of setups you'd expect to brute force Crysis at 16K if you wanted to. Yet Borderlands 4 is chugging like it's 2012. Gearbox actually warned people before launch, basically saying, yeah, don't expect miracles if your PC's a few years years old, which is basically PR speak for, sorry, this thing's not optimized. They dropped a 2.7 gigabyte day one patch that fixed some crashing issues, but the core problem is still there. Unreal Engine 5's lumen lighting, texture streaming particle effects, it's eating GPUs alive. Even with DLSS or frame generation, you get stutters, hitching, and input lag. And if you don't turn on upscaling, forget it. You're dropping frames harder than claptrap falls off stairs. Now, over to Chronos. And I'll be honest, visually, this game is gorgeous. The atmosphere, the sound design, the way it sucks you into this bleak sci-fi world, top tier. But the performance? Not even close. Players are reporting stutters, huge FPS dips, especially during combat or traversal. And it's not just mid-range cards suffering. Even high-end GPUs struggle once you crank everything to epic at 1440p or 4K. The culprit here too. Surprise, surprise. Unreal Engine 5. Features like hardware lumen just tank performance. DSO. Gaming showed that turning it down from epic to high gives you an instant 20% boost in frames. But the trade-off is that you lose some of the gorgeous lighting that makes the game look next-gen in the first place. It's the same story. Either your game looks stunning and runs like garbage, or it runs better and looks a little flat. And here's the kicker. Both these games do have DLSS, FSR, upscaling tools, all the buzzwords. But those aren't magic wands. They help, but they don't fix the fundamental problem. These games are shipping with settings that no consumer hardware on Earth can handle comfortably. It's the same old story. Devs target the absolute bleeding edge and forget that the average Steam player doesn't have a $3,000 GPU sitting in their case. The wait is over. We finally know more about the Venom game. And for fans like me, who've been following every rumor, every leak, every scrap of info since Spider-Man 2 dropped, this feels huge. Ever since that massive INSOMNIAC leak back in 2023, the one that revealed Venom, Lethal Protector alongside Wolverine, Spider-Verse, and a bunch of canceled Spider-Man 2 DLC, the big question has always been, is Venom still happening? Well, now we know. According to new reporting from MP1 Saint, Venom is alive, still in development, and still building off everything Insomniac laid down in Spider-Man 2. Wolverine is coming first in 2026, but right after that, Venom is next in line. And honestly, the details we're hearing now are the kind of stuff that makes you realize this isn't just some side project. They're treating it like a full game. We're playing as Eddie Brock, classic Eddie 2, not Tom Hardy's version. More comic book accurate, big, tank-like build. The Venom a lot of us grew up with. And that makes sense, because if you go back to Spider-Man 2, Venom's moveset and combat system were already too detailed to just be a one-off sequence. He had his own physics, his own way of fighting, and Tony Todd even said he recorded way more dialogue than Insomniac ended up using. That alone told us Venom was being set up for something bigger. And let's not forget the lore breadcrumbs. Eddie Brock was already teased in Insomniac's Spider-Man universe. Remember Peter's farewell card at the Daily Bugle in the 2018 game? Eddie's name was right there. We haven't seen him since, but now's the time to finally bring him in. As for the villain, it's Carnage, Cletus Kasady himself. If you did the side missions in Spider-Man 2, you met him. Then he just vanished. No closure, no payoff. It always felt like DLC bait. But with that DLC canceled, it looks like Carnage is stepping into the spotlight here. And honestly, that's perfect. Venom versus Carnage has always been one of the most brutal matchups in Spider-Man lore. Another detail, Anti-Venom will also play a role. It showed up in Spider-Man 2, but here it's supposed to be much more monstrous, closer to the comics. So we're not just getting Venom's powers, we're getting the whole spectrum of symbiote chaos. Now, the original leaks suggested this game would release around now, in late 2025. But things have shifted. The new timeline points to 2027. Yeah, it's a wait, but considering everything Insomniac's been through, canceled projects, Sony's failed live service push, the massive leak, it makes sense. Venom was originally supposed to be more like Miles Morales, a smaller side story, but sources say it's grown into something bigger. And honestly, that's probably for the best. Because here's the truth, we've never had a proper modern open-world Venom game. The closest we got was Ultimate Spider-Man back in 2005, or Prototype in 2009, which actually started life as a Venom pitch. That space has been sitting empty for years, and if anyone can do it right, it's Insomniac. And it's not just Venom and Carnage in the mix. MP1SD's report even mentions Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099 being tied into Insomniac's future projects. Maybe that's Spider-Man 3. Maybe he even shows up here. But clearly, they're building something bigger that ties these games together. So yeah, the wait is longer than expected, but the payoff could be massive. Venom, Carnage, Anti-Venom, all in a full-blown open-world game from Insomniac. That's the kind of thing fans have been asking for since the PS2 days. Now the real question is, can Insomniac pull this off without stretching themselves too thin? Will Venom feel like a true standalone experience? Or will it just be Spider-Man but darker? And after all these years of waiting, do you think an open-world Venom game can actually live up to the hype?